All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Word with Ty Brownlow. I am your host, Ty Brownlow. And remember, no one is worthless. No story is worthless. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest for you. I'll give you a couple of words about my guest. Leadership, community, provider, business, all the way from North Miami Beach. Please put your hands together for Mr. Evan St. Forth. How are you, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And no problem at all. No problem at all. Now, you're here today to speak on something I think, people, I don't think people really take time to think a lot of because of everything else that's going on. But, you are the CEO and owner of St. Forth's Funeral Homes, correct?
Right.
And basically, you're here to talk about something very key, like the physical and mental toll that the pandemic is actually having on, funerals and funeral directors. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Right. So, as we all know, unfortunately, we've been dealing with this pandemic called COVID. And, frontline workers have really been affected in the hospitals. But what's interesting is I don't think a lot of people are highlighting what funeral homes are dealing with. So I just want to commend you for having me here today, because I don't think a lot of people are kind of wondering what we've been dealing with. So, funeral homes have directly been affected, and we are also considered frontline workers. I was having a conversation the other day with my wife because she's a physician. Mm-hmm. And so they gave her priority. We live in Florida, so in Florida, anyone that's in the medical field gets priority to get the vaccine. But unfortunately, for individuals in our industry, which is, of course, is the funeral business, we haven't gotten any kind of, not to say that we should get special treatment, but we're dealing with families that have had someone that has passed with COVID. So dealing with that individual or the human body, I think is putting us in the front line. So funeral directors or any funeral personnel is not considered priority in Florida. It's only anyone in the medical field or anyone over the age of 65. So it's kind of sad how they haven't prioritized us. Now, of course, with majority of the vaccines starting to become available, I'm assuming that at some point I will. Now, let me also say disclosure that there are some other states that have, kind of given funeral home directors and staff a priority. But in Florida, at least, that hasn't been the situation. And then you were asking, what was it like dealing with COVID?
Yeah.
When COVID, I'd say right now, COVID is not as bad as it was. We're still getting COVID cases, but I would say more or less last year, around March, April, throughout that whole year, it was really bad. We were dealing maybe with about 15, 20 cases of strictly COVID cases per week outside of our normal business. So just imagine, dealing with that on a daily basis. I mean, I got no rest. Our staff really got no rest. We were having to work, weekends and mornings, nights. Fortunately, we've so far gotten through it. Like I said, it's not as bad, but it was really bad,
Well, I mean, but still, there are still, it's still the physical and it's still like the mental anxiety and the anguish as well,
Right.
Especially if you're just, especially if you're telling me you all still have not been considered for the vaccine. And here it is, numbers are rising. They're still rising, it's not going anywhere. Like people still have the need to, bury their loved ones or what have you. So people are still going to come to you for services or what have you.
Right.
But the fact that no one or the state doesn't consider you all to be that essential, like, we're essential enough to stay open to, have the funerals or whatever, but not essential enough to like be provided with a vaccine.
Right. It's weird. I know. It's a little weird.
Look, I have some words, but we're not going to say those words right now. Okay.
Exactly.
So let me just ask, like, how are you mentally, keeping your clients and your staff safe during this time? Like, how are you mentally preparing, them to be cool and be calm, as well as like physically.
Right, right. Well, I want to thank our team because, a lot of people around this time could have just said, you know what, I don't want to deal with it. And a lot of our, team decided to just stick with it. So, what we did when it was really bad, of course, was we were doing most of everything virtually. And then with our state, they had reduced visitation and services to about 10 people maximum. So of course, live streaming became very popular. And with the clientele that we deal with, traditionally, they like to still have your normal funeral service where they have the casket displayed, go to the cemetery. So that was really detrimental to a lot of families because, they can't come and see their mother, their father.
Right.
There was all these restrictions. We had a couple clients that even said, you know what, this is after the person passed. They would actually have us hold the remains. And they were like, look, we're going to wait it out a month or more just to see, because they really wanted to have that closure by having a service. So we had clients that were willing to just take the chance and say, we're going to wait this out and see, if maybe the state will open things up so we can actually attend services.
But what kind of, like the stress and anxiety, like not only for the family, but for yourselves as well, because we're all human, Yes, I know at the end of the day, I know this is a business. I have to do what's been asked of me to provide a service, but still at the end of the day you are human.
Right.
You have feelings, these are people's loved ones, and here it is, it's almost as if and no real fault to the state itself because everybody's following the guidelines of the CDC, hopefully.
Right.
The guidelines of the CDC. Right. And we can only do so much, but still with like waiting like weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
Like I can only imagine if someone's been waiting like 6 months or more waiting to, bury a loved one, like the anguish, like,
right.
So like I said, that like hats off to you for just, man, mental health, like this is key.
Yeah.
I can only imagine being in, your line of work. Like it's stressful, like
it is
stressful on the team. It's, like everybody's dealing with a stressful like time.
Right.
So,
right.
Man, hats off to you. But let's talk a little bit about, St. Port's Funeral Home. Like, how did you originally get into this?
So, my father was a serial entrepreneur. He got involved in a lot of different things when we were young. Grew up, my father was born in Haiti, so my background is Haitian. We're in a city called Léogâne. And what happened was, like I said, my father dibbled and dabbled in a lot of other things. But when his father passed away, someone suggested that he get into the business. And it's funny because before his father passed away, his father asked him for $1 and whispered something in his ear and just said, look, take my advice. And so my father took it as a sign. The next day, someone approached him and said, hey, I think you should get into the funeral business. So my father took that as a sign, as if maybe it was coming from his dad, because his dad had passed away that day. And so, he took, the advice, opened up a funeral home. Mind you, he didn't really have much experience in that industry, but he just felt like his father was talking to him. And as soon as he opened up that one overseas in Haiti, it did really well, like the first day. So then my father decided to open up 2 other funeral homes in Haiti, and which makes 3. And as my father had those funeral homes, Of course, I would go back and forth to Haiti and I'd get involved. And I just decided when I was in high school that I just wanted to grow the family and the business. And so I went to school here in Florida for mortuary science and then graduated. And as I graduated, I did my internship like any normal individual. And as I was doing my internship, the whole time I knew that this was temporary for me. And I was also someone that really would ask God for guidance all the time. And so as I was doing my internship, someone reached out to me about a building that was vacant. Come to find out, this building was a funeral home, and it was the same funeral home where Versace, when he had passed away, the same funeral home they used when he passed away. So then I was only 25 at the time. There was no for sale sign on the building. I reached out, finally got a hold of the owners, went back and forth with them, came up with a price, and again, 25, and they actually accepted. And so I spoke to my dad about it, and he said, you know what, you have my full support. And so we teamed up and we made it work. I mean, in the beginning, like anything else, it was rough. We were in the red for a couple of years, and it got to the point where my father would even say, maybe you should consider selling the business. But I just, I told him I wasn't going to give up on it. And as a side hustle, what I did was I would embalm bodies for other funeral homes. So fortunately, because I had good hands, funeral homes would use me to do all their prep work. And so that actually would supplement my income to keep the doors open. So I'd say it took us, honestly, 3 years to be in the black, And from then on, we've gotten better and better and better to the point now where we're opening some other locations here in Florida too.
So, what would you say has been your number one or one of your golden rules of business since you've been in business? Because as you said, man, you've seen the rough days, and we live in a society, unfortunately, sometimes that people just love to see the now instead of the before. But what are some of the tips that you have constantly used? Hey, look here, no matter what, I'm still going to remain A, B, and C.
Right. At the end of the day, I think we all have our personalities. And so I would say, for me, I'm just a very resilient person. I don't take no for an answer. I'm just very consistent at anything I do in life. It's always been just who I am as a person. And so I'd say that is definitely something that's kept me along in terms of just hanging on. I'll tell you, there were days where I would literally, how they don't do that nowadays, but you'll have a credit card and then they'll mail you like a check in the mail.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would get those checks and I would deposit them quick in the bank, because at the end of the day, I needed as much money as I could as a cash reserve. And so, like I said, another thing that I would do is, just talk to other individuals that were in the industry that could give me a little bit of guidance. So I think that also helped me along the way. It's funny because, I started at 25. So when I would meet with people, they'd look at me and like, what do you know about running a business? And so that was also tough too, because people would be like, what is it you know about this industry?
Right. Okay. All right. So no, those are lessons learned, because as you said, you were young when you first got in, and, you have to fight past, the stigma of being young, and to show people, hey, this is what it is that I'm doing. I'm here to stay. And yeah, things may have started off a little turbulent, but we've steadied out. And as you said, now you're to the point where you're about to expand. So
yeah,
there it is. All right. Now, my last question that my show is known for, I have to ask Mr. Evan St. Fort. Now, I know you hit it on resilient, but we're going to have to ask for another word. What is the one word that you feel best describes you and why?
Oh, that's hard. I gotta maybe 2 words, maybe.
Okay, come on.
So like my last name, right, is Saint Fort, and my name is a French name, but when you actually translate my last name into the French meaning, it means strong saint. So, and literally that's what my name means, strong saint. So like my whole thought process behind that is I believe that I was put on this planet to really do good by people and to serve people. So I guess you could say a servant. I look at myself as an angel. If God were to bring an angel into this world, how would that look? And so I guess you could say an angel, because my goal in this world before I die is to bring blessings upon people. So if you're my friend, if you're an associate, my goal in, at least for me, is to pour into your life. So if you know me, I find some sort of way to help you in any situation, whether that's, helping you be a better husband to your wife, helping you in business in terms of whatever knowledge I know, financially, if someone's in distress, of course, not to say that I give anybody that asks me for money, but you know what I mean? So I guess you could say I look at myself as an angel. And I know that sounds weird, but literally my goal on this planet is to serve God and do whatever he wants me to do.
Okay. Look, those are your words. And I mean, you explained them well. And I like that, strong saint, so yeah, man, like, yes. And, I'm just going to say, I know I used it earlier, but provider, you're providing a service, for those who are trying to take their loved ones or have them transition on to the next level,
Right.
And, just being like an ear and being caring and, just understanding, man, look here, I provide. So,
Yeah.
man, you can only take what I provide. So if I'm providing this great service for you, please, man. But first, let me just say, I just thank you for coming on, and I just thank you for, just bringing light to something that we really don't think about,
Yeah.
Pretty much as you said, earlier, yes, unfortunately, the death toll is going up, for coronavirus, COVID-19, what have you. But we're not really, I don't think we're really paying attention to like what type of toll is it really taking on funeral homes. Now, there may have been talk about doctors and this, that, or what have you, which is necessary because they are the ones who have to treat them as well.
Right.
But at the end of the day, for those who don't make it, there are certain supplies and things that I'm pretty sure you need that you may not have. I mean, hey, because everything else going on out here, that's going to be, probably 3 to 4 weeks, another month and a half away. And now that puts people in a bind, because when you do talk about, burying loved ones or what have you, it's just not the people in the city that you have to worry about. They have family coming in from out of town who want to see, the ceremony as well. So it puts, stress and turmoil and, on everyone. And unfortunately, man, until we can beat this thing, this may be the trend to come for the next couple of months or so. I hope not.
Right.
And, as you said before, I hope you all receive, pretty much all of the vaccines that you all, deserve, because as I said, this is a service. You're providing a service. We're like sending these people,
Right.
to the next, transition. So, man, first,
the one thing I do want to say is, because like you said, this all came to us as a surprise.
Yeah.
The one thing that I can say is we all know, unfortunately, that there's an end of the road for everyone.
Sure.
And so I say this to a lot of people, don't put yourself in a situation where you're lost. So You know, we majority of the most successful people on this planet, they're not successful by coincidence. I think the number one trait that they all have in common is the fact that they're planners. So if you study, you know, again, wealthy people or successful people, it's because they planned to get there. So what I'm trying to say is, we all know, unfortunately, you know, there's an end of the road. And the same way you plan for marriage, the same way you plan for maybe your college education, the same way you plan to purchase a home is, you know, the same way you should plan for the end of, you know, your story. And so what I mean by that is, instead of leaving that financial burden on your spouse or on your children, set them up for success instead of setting them up for failure. You know, set up, you know, a will, set up a trust, have life insurance, talk to someone like me and plan out, you know, what does my funeral look like and how much is it going to cost, so that when all of these things do happen, you know, your family can continue to move on and progress instead of go backwards.
You know, I'm just going to say that is very key. And the reason why I feel it doesn't happen enough in certain communities or what have you, you know, especially within the African American community, we really don't want to talk about it. You know, it's pretty much taboo.
It is.
Yeah. Why do I want to talk about my funeral or this, that, or what have you? And, you know, those who do talk about it, you know, freely to their loved ones or what have you, they're looked at a little bit different, you know, but I marvel at those who, you know, actually realize, hey, at some point the end is coming, you know, and as you said before, you want them, you know, in a world of help, not a world of hurt.
Right.
So, you know, life insurance, things of that nature, that's key, because so many times we see GoFundMe, you know. And,
yeah, exactly. Especially in our community.
And, you know, it's not a knock to, you know, those who do it or what have you, but we don't think about that in the long run. Hey, and especially now, you know, like we should really be thinking about these sort of things. So I really thank you for coming on, and I really thank you for sharing your story and just giving insight on something, you know, not saying that we take for granted, but, you know, I don't think we really, you know, put enough perspective on at times.
Right.
I'll just say, you know what, I'll say that. We don't put enough perspective on at times.
You're right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, Mr. Evan St. Fort, I thank you for being my guest today. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Word with Ty Brownlow. I've been your host, Ty Brownlow. Remember, no one is worthless, no story is worthless. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Word with Ty Brownlow. Or you can just go to my website, tybrownlow.com, get this wonderful interview, plus other great interviews, and also on my audio podcast, which is on Apple, Google, and Anchor podcast platforms, as well as Spotify. So, thank you again, sir. We are out. Peace, people.
See you.